Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds on something fascinating, financial trading, especially day trading.
Hmm.
You know that image, right? The super confident trader, all those screens,
Yeah.
the dream of big money and, well, what Tom Hugard calls freedom. It looks so appealing.
Oh, absolutely. That image is powerful. It pulls a lot of people in. But then there's the harsh truth, isn't there?
It is?
Well, the data suggests something like 95% of traders consistently fail. And look, it's not because the brokers are out to get them or the market's rigged or they're missing some magic software. It's deeper than that. Surprisingly internal.
95%. Wow. Okay, so if it's not the external stuff, what is it? What's this internal battle you're talking about? And more importantly, how did the few that 5% actually manage to win? What are they doing differently?
Well, that's the fascinating part we're exploring today. Success here isn't really about cracking some complex market code or having the fanciest tools. It's about mastering your inner game, your psychological responses.
Okay.
It's about understanding how your own mind works. And crucially, actively, like recoding how you react to things. It's pretty profound, actually. It even ties into concepts from people like Eckhart Tolle from The Power of Now, combined with, decades of real trading floor observations. It's a battle within.
So when the sources say traders are beating themselves, what does that actually look like? Day to day, trade to trade. What's the psychological engine driving that self-sabotage?
Yeah, it often boils down to our hardwired human responses, sometimes called the reptile brain, right? Because it's about those primal survival level instincts, not logic.
Right, fight or flight stuff.
Exactly. And most people unconsciously are totally identified with their minds, their thoughts. And the mind is constantly doing its thing, what our sources call compulsive thinking.
Constantly chattering away.
Constantly speculating, complaining, judging, worrying about what might happen, replaying what did happen. It's not just background noise, it directly messes up trading.
Okay, I can see that. Give me an example. Like, a trader puts on a trade thinking, okay, I'm right about this. What happens next when the market disagrees? Which it often does.
Where that initial assumption, I am right, that's a huge trip hazard right there.
Mm.
Because when the market inevitably moves against them, boom, instant conflict, emotional pain.
Ah.
And then their actions start being driven by those feelings, disappointment, frustration, fear not, by what the market is actually signaling. And like Tully points out, the mind hates the present moment. It feels powerless there.
Right.
So it escapes. It jumps to, what if I lose more? Or, oh man, I should have sold earlier, obsessing about the future or the past.
Yeah.
And that completely paralyzes them right when they need to be clear-headed and act.
And I guess nothing fuels that destructive cycle like the sheer pain of losing money. Our brains hate losing.
Intensely. Research shows we feel a financial loss something like 2.5 times more strongly than an equivalent gain, even if it's just, potential loss on paper.
Wow, 250% more intense.
Yeah. And that pain makes really smart people.
Mm-hmm.
People who are like surgeons or CEOs outside of trading act completely irrationally when their money's on the line.
So how does that play out? What does running away from the pain look like for the average trader?
It manifests in two classic, really destructive ways. First, closing winners way too early.
Ah, snatching small profits.
Exactly. The trade goes green, and instantly the mind creates pain. What if it reverses? I'll lose this profit. So to stop that uncomfortable feeling, they grab a tiny win, often missing the much bigger move. That's where that saying comes from. You can go broke taking a profit.
Right, because you cut your winners short, but what about the losers?
That's the flip side. And it's often worse. Holding losers too long. The trade goes red, and now they're paralyzed by the fear of actually taking the loss, making it real.
So they cling to hope.
They cling to hope, maybe it'll turn around. But as the experienced traders say, hope is not a strategy. And this clinging, this hoping, often leads to, complete account destruction.
Yeah.
They fall for what's sometimes called the supermarket effect.
Oh.
The price dropped, it must be a bargain, let's buy more. But trading isn't like buying groceries. Just because it's fallen doesn't mean it's cheap or won't fall further. That thinking just does not work in the trading business.
Okay, so fear of loss is huge. Are there other, maybe more subtle psychological traps?
Definitely. Guilt is a big one.
Guilt. How does that fit in?
Well, we're sort of programmed by society, right? Be busy, do something, be productive. So when a trader is sitting there watching the markets, waiting for a good setup, they can start feeling guilty for being idle.
Ah, so they feel like they should be trading.
Exactly. Which pushes them into overtrading, taking mediocre trades just to feel like they're doing something. When honestly, a huge part of trading success is actually doing nothing most of the time. Waiting patiently. You're not paid by the hour.
That makes sense. It's counterintuitive, though, that instinct to just do something.
It really is. And then there's the opposite problem sometimes. Overconfidence.
After a big win, maybe.
That's exactly when traders are most vulnerable. They have a great winning streak, feel invincible, and then they forget to flip the switch. They ditch their rules, ignore warning signs, and often have their biggest losing day right after their biggest winning one.
Wow. Okay. And beyond these personal traps, you mentioned a kind of fundamental misunderstanding about the market itself.
Yeah, this belief that the market should be logical. That it has to make sense.
But it often doesn't, right?
Right. As our sources emphasize, the market isn't logical.
Yeah.
And crucially, it can remain illogical longer than you can stay solvent. Trying to force logical patterns onto everything is, well, it's a dead end. Success isn't about figuring out the market's logic. It's about managing your own reactions to its illogical nature.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty clear picture of the reptile brain, the fear, the guilt, the hope trap. Now, the solution. How do the 5% do it? How do they consistently win against these powerful internal forces?
It really comes down to cultivating deep self-awareness and actively managing their internal state. They essentially learn to recode those default messages from their brain. They learn to flip the switch on those gut instinctive reactions.
And this connects back to Eckhart Tolle.
Strongly. That transformation mirrors his teachings quite closely. The absolute first step, the cornerstone, is realizing you are not your mind. You are not your thoughts.
Okay, conceptually I get that. But how does that work in the heat of the moment? When the market's whipping around, how does I'm not my mind actually help?
It allows you to become an observer. Successful traders learn to watch their internal chatter, the fear, the greed, the impulse to chase, the urge to bail without getting swept away by it. They become aware of the pain, as one source puts it, without letting the pain dictate their actions.
So they can see the fear rising, acknowledge it, but not act from it.
Precisely. They act from a higher level of awareness, based on their strategy and what the market is actually doing, not the internal noise. It's like becoming the silent watcher Tolle talks about. Observing the thought creates a gap, a space, what he calls no mind. And in that space, you can choose a rational response instead of a reactive one.
That's a massive shift. So instead of running from the discomfort, the pain.
They run towards the danger, metaphorically speaking. They embrace the discomfort.
Which aligns with Tolle's idea of accepting what is.
Exactly. The 5% understand that pain, the pain of small losses, the pain of holding a winner through pullbacks is inevitable in trading. They don't resist it mentally or emotionally like the 95% do. Because resisting reality, resisting what is, that's what creates suffering. Acceptance frees you up.
So they expect the pain. They don't like it, presumably, but they accept it as part of the process.
They accept it and even use it as information, a guide. They move beyond that primal fight or flight reaction. That willingness to sit with discomfort is absolutely key.
Okay, and this leads to something you mentioned earlier, which sounds completely backwards. The number one secret of success is that the best loser wins. What on earth does that mean?
It means becoming exceptionally good at losing, which translates to taking lots of small losses before any of them had the chance to manifest in a large, paralyzing loss.
Cutting losses quickly, ruthlessly almost.
Ruthlessly, but without emotion. It's about accepting you were wrong on that specific trade idea fast. This whole philosophy really shapes their trading life, and it's built on 3 sort of core commands they live by.
Okay, let's break those down. Command number 1.
Command 1. Assume you were wrong until proven otherwise. Just think about the mindset shift there. Most people enter a trade assuming, or at least hoping, they're right.
Yeah, naturally.
The 5% flip it. They start with the assumption, okay, I'm probably wrong on this. Then, if the trade immediately goes against them, it just confirms their initial assumption. There's no shock, no ego blow. It makes it psychologically much easier to just take the loss. The internal conflict is neutralized before it even starts.
Wow. That removes so much emotional baggage. Okay, what's command 2?
Command 2. Expect to be uncomfortable. They know pain is coming. Either the pain of a losing trade or, almost paradoxically, the discomfort of holding a winning trade and resisting the urge to grab profits too soon because of fear.
So they don't try to bargain with that feeling like, okay, I'll just take half off here to ease the pressure.
Nope. They don't negotiate with the pain. They don't try to justify actions that compromise their edge just to feel better right now. They simply expect discomfort and accept it as part of the job description.
Okay, and command 3. This sounds like where the really counterintuitive actions come in.
Absolutely. Command 3 is Add when you subtract and subtract when you add.
Okay, unpack that. Add when you subtract.
It means when the market moves in your favor, when it subtracts from your initial wrongness, proving you right, that's when the 5% add to their position. They press their winners. They don't shrink away because of fear. They know you can go broke taking a profit if you consistently exit too early. They ride the wave.
Okay, adding to winners makes sense, but hard to do emotionally. And the other part, subtract when you add.
This is about losses. When the market moves against you, when it adds to the evidence that you're wrong, that's when the 5% subtract. They take the loss immediately. They cut the position.
They don't add more, averaging down like the supermarket effect.
Absolutely not. They don't hope. They subtract. They get out. They recognize the initial assumption, I wrong, was confirmed, and they act on it decisively.
This all points to such a disciplined, process-driven approach. Very focused on the present moment, not getting lost in what-ifs, especially crucial in day trading, I imagine.
Totally. The successful traders, they are shaped by their continuous process. They have faith that if they just execute their process correctly, consistently, the outcome will take care of itself over time. It's like Tolle says, the only thing that is ultimately real about your journey is the step you were taking at this moment. Focus on the step, not the destination.
Yeah, that reminds me of that anecdote in the source material about the trader having a massive 100,000-pound winning day and realizing afterwards he had not felt fear not once the entire day. How is that even possible?
According to him, it was because he had stayed so focused in the present moment, so completely in line with the rhythm of the market. No mental energy wasted on past regrets or future anxieties, just pure, focused execution in the now. That's the zone they strive for.
And this isn't something you just achieve and then you're done, right? This mastery, it's ongoing.
Oh, completely. It's a lifelong practice. Even traders with decades of success are still continuously working on their personal flaws and those inbuilt defense mechanisms. It's a continuous, never-ending process. They have rituals, daily mental prep, visualizing scenarios, all designed to keep managing their psychology and staying grounded.
So wrapping this up, it's crystal clear that success in trading, especially the high-speed world of day trading, it's not really about finding some holy grail indicator. It's a deep psychological journey.
Absolutely. It demands intense self-awareness, deliberately disidentifying from your mind's automatic, pain-dodging habits, and having the courage to consistently take those counterintuitive actions that embrace discomfort, accept reality, and keep you anchored right here in the present moment.
It really is a paradox, isn't it? The path, as our sources say, is simple but not easy. It takes real work, attention, focus, dedication, sacrifice, and courage.
Yeah. So maybe the question for you listening is, based on all this, the reptile brain, that intense fear of loss, the call to flip the switch and maybe even run towards the danger, what specific personal flaw, what ingrained defense mechanism are you ready to actually look at, to identify and start confronting in your own approach? Knowing, look, it's a continuous process, maybe never fully won't, but essential to start if you want to move towards that successful minority. What's the one thing you need to accept and tackle first?